My guest on the record this month has been dubbed brilliant yet divisive. Neurosurgeon Charlie Teo, embraced by his patients, lauded by some colleagues and derided by others. Over the last 30 years, he's become one of the most sought-after brain surgeons in the world, at the forefront of modern medicine, endoscopic brain surgery. His specialty, tumours that are low-grade and curable, but deep indeed in the brain and hard to access, except by endoscopy. His name has been lent to that very procedure, dubbed Teo-omas. What, though, of the battleground of modern medicine, the egos, the empire building, and the willingness to forego that in favour of patient happiness, health, and survival? Charlie Teo, who joins me now. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Carson.
Let's just understand where we are right here, right now. We're in a private hospital. It's very exclusive, and yet you reach out and transcend wealth. It's all in the name of health, essentially. What is it about that quest and that fight that people have in them that resonates?
I guess it all boils down to treating patients like you would a member of your own family. I think that's the essence of it, because you're right, the rich, the poor, the sickly, the educated, the non-educated, all unfortunately can fall victim to brain cancer and brain tumours. And so it's totally indiscriminate the way it presents, and therefore I guess you've got to treat patients all according to one rule. And the one rule is that if that was my family member, how would I want a doctor to treat me?
You are part of a fraternity that you've dubbed the nobility, really. It is a rarefied existence, and the expectation is that you put your head down, you do the job, but you don't make headlines. You've courted them assiduously. So, it's ironic, only to the extent that your background was one of be seen and not heard. What was it that gave you that rebel with a cause streak?
Okay, well, you're absolutely right. No one actually verbalises be seen and not heard, but it is actually one of those unspoken laws that I think most medical practitioners would like you to obey. My mother never really taught me that rule again, and she never really taught me to fly under the radar either, but there was one rule that she always taught me, and that is that you don't be a follower and you march to your own tune. And I guess by not being a follower, marching to my own tune, doing what I think is right, I have become more heard and not just seen. Now, it was never intentional, and I make that statement very strongly because a lot of people think that I sort of love the attention and love the media. I mean, I don't mind it. I could easily say no, but no, it's not. It was never my intention to be heard and seen rather than just seen.
Something, though, awoke in you, and it was perhaps almost the reverse psychology of being told you can't do something or you're not welcome. That was only a spur, not a deterrent. Let's talk about study, but also before that, the germ of the idea. Your parents were in medicine, right? So it was very much,
yes,
the desire of your father?
Yes. Well, again, I can't remember them ever pushing me into medicine, but I did want to do other things. And rather than push me into medicine, they just deterred me from other things. I wanted to be a lawyer. They said no. I wanted to be a politician. No. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a security guard. I wanted to be a bouncer, a black belt instructor.
With all of that.
I've done some of that, but no. And they kept telling me, look, that's fine, but it's not what we would encourage you to do. And they never actually pushed me into medicine. It was almost like it was serendipity that I just sort of fell into medicine.
When you're surrounded by it, though, when you kind of, even the hours, those kind of crazy, unable to quantify timeframes, your parents must have worked to, inevitably. How much of that became second nature? Oh
no, that was something that was completely second nature. I mean, I've never really, I've never consciously said to myself, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to sort of do 120 hours a week. I guess I've just been very lucky that I've pursued a course that I'm passionate about, and the work hours have just followed. I do have a great work ethic. I work many, many hours, and it doesn't faze me at all. I mean, because I love it. It's what I love.
You were on that, to an extent, fast track of success, and then you followed it up with the results that took you to the US, to Texas, to Arkansas, and then with the desire to come back, that really, you say you've never consciously, ploughed on and worked beyond your means, but those papers that you published, the chapters that you worked to, that was very deliberate.
Yeah,
correct?
it was. In America, it was. In America, it's the concept is publish or perish, and they do insist that to get your promotions from assistant to associate to full professor, you need to have publications. So it was intentional. They were intentional sort of efforts to promote to get promoted in the system. Back in Australia, I still have published quite a few papers, but it's mostly to silence my critics. Because one of the, I guess many people have said, oh, well, if he's that good, he needs to publish, or if he's getting that good results, he needs to publish. So I had to publish to prove to them that my results were good.
You said in an address for Australia Day back in 2012, life in America would have been, in a sense, so much easier for you. I mean, forget tall poppy. That's very much, we welcome you with open arms if you're a renegade.
Yes.
But it wasn't to be.
No, it was absolutely the case. I was on the crest of a wave. I could have kept on that crest, and it would have taken me to, I think, higher places, a big fish in a big pond. I have been a great advocate of a balanced life, and the balanced life in this situation was work is great in America, great work ethic, you can really, really sort of excel and get promoted. But the bottom line is that you really need to give respect to your family, and at that stage my family wanted to come back to Australia. So, well, my wife particularly wanted to come back to Australia, so I had to respect that.
Let's talk about family. Your parents were immigrants from Singapore, your godparents were immigrants, Italian. Many of their friends indeed were cut from the same cloth. So you had this idea around even restricting Chinese immigration for a while, for a good reason. What was that?
I did, I felt sorry for Australians. I mean, in the old term, the white Australians. I felt sorry for them because when the first Australians came out here, they were very hardworking, very conscientious, and they kept their heads down, they worked hard. And then there was a time where some Asians came out and they were the bad sort of type of Asians, and they were getting into drugs and crime and stuff like that. And I thought, that is so disrespectful of the people who are actually native to this country. They have opened their borders, they've opened their doors to us, and here we are sort of abusing that privilege. And I was a great advocate then of, just let's limit the number of people that we let in, so we let in good people only. I kind of still feel that way, Carson. I know that's politically incorrect to say that, but I still feel that, I do feel sorry for Australians now. I'm talking about, white, black, ethnic Australians now, because by letting in a bad group of people, or some bad people, it is going to taint the entire immigration sort of concept and the immigration population, and that's going to be bad for everyone. So I think the people who are led into Australia, they either respect the country, respect our laws, respect our traditions, or they get out.
You were also taught from a very young age, assimilation, respect the culture, but you're here as a visitor. So how does that affect the way you interact ultimately? You and the round.
Well, it started off with my parents. My father strongly believed that if we were going to come to Australia, then we need to be Australian. And they purposely did not teach me Chinese. They didn't want me to speak with a Chinese accent, for example. And I think you realise in those days, those colonial Chinese were more English than the English, hence Charles.
Yes, Prince Charles,
Anne, Philip, Elizabeth. And, we even had a corgi dog. So, no, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. And again, it was the seed was sown then, and I still think I've got it in me that when you come to Australia, look, I was just thinking about this the other day. When we go to a Muslim country, we respect their traditions. So women are covered.
On pain of imprisonment.
Absolutely. So why should they not come to our country and respect the fact that we don't like women who are covered, and we do like the face being exposed? And, again, politically incorrect, but I think that's reasonable to expect that.
What made you think it? What was going on in your mind? Just that thought bubble there.
Well, the thought bubble was that my own children were going overseas, and I go to Middle Eastern countries and Muslim countries a lot, and I do respect, I mean, not that I believe in them, but I do respect them because I'm in their country. So I figure if I do that, why can't the people who come here respect our traditions and our culture?
Let's talk about beliefs more broadly. For you, your parents, certainly your father, Buddhist, and yet that wasn't foisted on you. Although Christmases had joss sticks alongside the Christmas tree, so
Yes.
it was
Yeah, kind of weird.
East and West. And what ultimately, as the dust settled on that, what are you left with? What do you fall back on when you're right on the precipice there, particularly with life and death?
Oh, you mean the way it makes me interact with my patient?
Yeah, and I suppose when you're contemplating your own mortality.
So I've always thought of myself as a spiritual person, but not a religious person. And I guess what that means is that there are too many things that make us different as it is now and make us fall into different groups, and these groups are antagonistic, and we find differences with each other, and that can only breed acrimony. So why introduce another barrier, i.e. religion? So I think we can all believe in a spiritual God or a spiritual being, but religion, I think, has just done nothing but tear people apart, build barriers that create more animosity and more acrimony. And again, I'm probably going to alienate all those religious people out there, but I think you can be spiritual but not necessarily divisive. So I'd like a world with an encompassing religion where everyone believes in spirituality but not necessarily believes in their own religion to the exception of everyone else's religion.
It would be utopia, which, I mean, realistically, time and again.
I mean, look at it, Carson. Look at our world. We're fighting each other because of geographical boundaries. We're fighting each other because of religion, because of colour. It's almost like Gulliver's Travels, where one day we're going to fight each other because someone opens the egg at the big end and the other group opens the egg at the pointy end. It's crazy. It's crazy. We're just fighting over ridiculous things. And if you want me to sort of relate that to my job teaches me every day how fragile life is. I mean, one day you can be on top of the world and the next day you're dying from brain cancer. And it can happen at any age, at any time, to any person. And so if life is so fragile and so limited, why waste time fighting each other and being, angry?
Tell me about those hands. I mean, I'm curious. The insurance on them must be out of this world, because that is your key resource, is it?
I'm very lucky that I have no tremor, and I have great manual dexterity. I can do things that other people seem to not be able to do.
No coffee, no alcohol, part of that.
It didn't come easily. I mean, I train very hard. My body's a temple. I don't drink tea, coffee. I don't smoke, drink alcohol. I really try and respect my physical physicality, I guess, because
don't
it's
say
very
MSG,
important.
right? Because I mean, you love the Chinese food. So it's probably the one weak link.
It is my weakness, gluttony.
Well, you wouldn't know it. I mean, then there's the kayaking, there's the outdoor pursuits. You take your patients, notably, with you, because that idea of don't mope, get back into the saddle, ASAP.
Yeah.
Walk me through that. How close a bond has that been over time?
Oh, it's been a very close bond. Again, I approach my patients not just from a neurosurgical viewpoint, but from a very holistic healing viewpoint. And I've actually been criticised for that. I've been criticised for calling my patients by their first name, allowing them to call me by my first name, getting too close to them. But I think that's a very holistic approach to the patient. Why would you sit behind a desk and just be a surgeon when you could be a healer? And you can actually guide them through it, give them emotional sort of support at the same time. And in keeping with that, it is very important to get patients out of hospital quickly. The complication rate after surgery is 6% per day you're in hospital cumulative. And so the longer they're in hospital, the more chance you're going to get a complication. It's imperative to get them out quickly, both physically and emotionally, to get them out quickly.
What's your outlet for when it all goes wrong and things cumulatively start to build up? I mean, if it's not one patient in a week, it could be 3 and has been, I know. And then you're on a flight to somewhere to lecture, and time zones and body and everything collide together. Do you begin to think, I've got other options, this is not alpha and omega, we can go somewhere else?
Look, I have thought that. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that it's all been too hard sometimes, and I've thought it's time to get out. It's been hard on me and my family, all the criticism, the long hours, etc. But again, from a very selfish point of view, I love it. I mean, really, I do really love my job, and I do feel a responsibility to my patients that. And it's very hard for me to hear of a 4-year-old kid over in Austria who I know I can save, no one else is prepared to do the operation, and then for me to go, well, actually I've got a holiday next week. Or actually it's just too hard to fly over there. I kind of feel compelled to.
You find it hard to say no as well, to that extent. I mean, there are those that might be considered pariahs, like the Rene Rivkins of this world. You went full tilt into offering him hope. They said he was faking it. You said he's got a history, so steady on here.
Yeah.
What's it like? Because it's almost like the equivalent of someone defending Saddam Hussein of that. It's like the Cabrat rule in law. Everyone has the right to treatment.
No, you're absolutely right. There's something like I treated, recently, I won't say which country because it might come back, but recently I treated this little kid with a brain tumour, and again, I had no idea who his father was. Turns out his father was a gangster. Mm. And turns out the kid did badly because all the doctors in the country that the kid was from were reluctant to treat him because this guy had been in jail for threatening to kill someone before and stuff. But, you know, it didn't even faze me. All I knew was that there was a child who I could save, and, you know, despite the father's background, he was nice to me, and so I had to take him on superficial sort of value. So everyone was saying, oh my God, don't you realise that if things went wrong, you know, he might have killed you or threatened to kill you. But the short answer was it didn't bother me. You know, I was just very honest with him. I was as honest with him as anyone who wasn't a gangster.
To that extent, as a bouncer in another life, at a nightclub,
there's a segue.
Well, that's the aim. You know, how important was it? And your mother was kind of behind this, was she not? You were off even before that in terms of jobs and services industry.
Right.
That was your playground, really.
Yeah.
But it taught you what?
Oh, karate has been an integral part of my life. It taught me discipline. It gave me confidence. It paid well when I was a bouncer. I think it's been a very, very important part of my life. The discipline it teaches you, and that discipline then transgresses all your actions. Not only vocational actions, but non-vocational actions. So, you know, my schoolwork improved, my other sports improved. And when I got my black belt, you know, basically I've been a very confident person because of that, I think. Confident and disciplined.
Genevieve, the quintessential Aussie, I think as you described her in other shapes and forms, the discussion to come back home, I think you said it lasted all of what, 2 seconds?
2 seconds.
Yeah.
The conversation was, I'm going home, are you coming?
Right. Okay. Inspired though, in a sense, by some tragedy, right? The shootings at high schools in America.
Oh yeah, no. She got the feeling that, look, I think a lot of expats, when they travel overseas and live overseas, do get that feeling that, you know, we're not home. We're not at home. This is not our place. We're still visitors and foreigners here. And I got that feeling as well. Not that I didn't like America, I loved it. I loved Americans, I loved the country, but when you sat down and philosophically thought about it, yes, you weren't inherently an American. And so Genevieve always had that feeling that she was Australian and she wanted the kids to be Australian. And it was her decision that in order for the kids to feel Australian and not sort of torn between two countries, we had to get them back to Australia at a young age. So that was why the conversation was very, very clear. I'm going back.
How much of the acrimony behind your own parents' divorce, 1969, was and has been a kind of if anything, again, reverse psychology? You work doubly hard to make sure, amidst everything else that you're trying to keep abreast of, the family comes first.
No, it wasn't as clear cut as that because, yes, it was a dysfunctional family and it was a very nasty sort of breakup, and my father wasn't the most supportive father. But, my mum was amazing. And so when I hear of women or men advocating single parenthood and how single parenthood, one loving person is better than no loving people, I do understand what they're saying. Now, when you've got a strong Rock of Gibraltar sort of parent who loves you unconditionally, then that's really all you need. It would have been great to have a father as well, and there were times when I missed that sort of father figure. But you know, my mum was superlative, and you know, that's all I needed. Her love, her guidance was enough.
You reflect on that, and do you ever think, well, I could have done more? When you replay moments in family terms, what comes to the front of your mind?
No, it was just all positive from mum, all negative from dad. No, there was nothing more. It was actually quite black and white. My father was not a good father. He never spent time with us. He was a bully. He beat me up. No, it was just black and white. I didn't like him. I didn't think he was a good dad, and I loved my mum, thought she was a great mum. You
came back, though, to some form of reconciliation right at the end of his life.
I did. You know, as a father, at the time, I realised there's always two sides to every story, that, you know, look, I don't know. I forgave him for some of his transgressions. And so I felt that it'd be easier to like someone than hate someone. And it would be good to have him die without me having any regrets. So I knew that he had a bad heart. He was going to die pretty soon. And I thought, oh, the poor bastard, I'll just sort of, you know, I may as well make amends. He wanted to make amends for many years. I sort of held off. And then about 2 years before he died, I decided that that was all too hard. It would be a whole lot easier just to be nice to him.
Let's talk about influences. The senior Australian neurosurgeon, Dr. Bernie Kwok, you know, you called him a man of rare vision and integrity. He saw something about what you were doing at Little Rock that others were not prepared to acknowledge. Again, jealousy, a whole host of reasons. How key was that, and has that been for you, that belief in what you're doing from others?
That gives you opportunities. Like if it wasn't for Bernie inviting me back to Australia, I would never have come back to Australia. I just couldn't, there was no job. So it gave me opportunities, but in terms of giving me strength of mind and giving me the strength to continue doing what I'm doing, no, that comes from inside, you know. I don't get the positive feedback from my colleagues, and I don't get the acknowledgement that I think I deserve. And the acknowledgement I get is when a patient does well, and that's what spurs me on, and that's what gives me the drive. I would love, I mean, they say there's nothing better than the accolades of your peers and the acceptance of your peers. I would love that, but I haven't had it. I don't think I'll ever get it, and so I just have to sort of find my strength from other sources. Yeah.
What's interesting about, you know, influences again, and coming back to your early life, television and Dr. Kildare. Just talk to me about, you were looking for some inspiration, you found it was almost like a light bulb moment.
Yeah, I think because if you don't have a father who is inspiring you, then you look for father figures. And there was no one around except for, you know, I watch TV, so there were these TV fictional characters that I found quite inspiring. Dr. Kildare was one of them. He was cool, he was calm in bad circumstances. He was pretty debonair, and so he was a bit of a father figure. And then John Wayne was brave and courageous, and so he was a bit of a father figure. And it wasn't really until I went to boarding school and then later on in life that I found father figures and inspiration from others. But in those early years, yeah, it was TV characters.
And you would go off and try to, even with a Lego set, just replicate a certain procedure without tipping anything over.
Yeah.
And discovering you could do it.
Yeah, I thought, well, if I'm going to be a brain surgeon, I'm going to have steady hands, and I would test myself, and if I couldn't do really, you know, taxing type physical things, I'd train so I could. I can remember trying to get the inside of a biro pen back into the casing without touching the edges. And yeah, I'd practice that for hours and hours on end until I could finally do it.
And the advances in equipment just have made that so much more accessible, but still, I mean, even with microscopes, the unexpected can happen.
Oh yeah, but even with, you know, the better the microscope, the greater the magnification, and with the greater the magnification comes an accentuation of any sort of tremor that you have. Okay. So when my fellows, for example, who come over to train with me from around the world, when they drink coffee before the operation, I can actually tell. They have a very fine tremor seen magnified under a microscope. Yeah.
What happens when you become, as it were, part of the establishment, even though you've talked about not being embraced and those that are all but prepared to watch you with glee? take a misstep, there's always someone coming up underneath, is there not? You know, another rebel with a cause to actually remind you that, you know, you were the maverick. Not forever though. What's that kind of, what keeps you on the cutting edge? What makes you have that, you know, break the rule type belief in the future?
Yeah, again, you know, it's not like that, Carson. It's not me going out saying I'm going to break the rules. I'm going to swim against the tide.
No.
I'm going to do what other people, you know, don't do. It's absolutely not like that. I have this very, very basic set of rules by which I treat my patients, and that is, if I had a tumour like that, or if my child had a tumour like that, and there's only a 1 in 1,000 chance that I could save that person's life, or someone could save my son's life, would I accept it? And, you know, so it's very simple. You know, I say to the family, I can take that tumour out, but the risk is incredibly high. Without the surgery, of course, he's going to die. I'm prepared to take the risk. Are you prepared to take the risk? Some people say no, and a lot of people say yes. And so it's not as if I go and go, oh, that tumour over there, everyone's called inoperable, I'm going to take it out because, you know, I'm just going to show them it's not inoperable.
That word, but it's getting a sense that it should even be excised from the lexicon.
Oh, absolutely should be. Yeah. You know, there's no such tumour as inoperable. You know, anyone can take a tumour out of the brain. It's the risk-benefit ratio that some people aren't willing to accept. And if patients or family members knew that, I think it'd be a whole lot more empowering for them, because then they realise, hang on, it's all about risk propensity. It's all about what I'm willing to take, what risk I'm willing to take. And if they're willing to take the risk, then the surgeon should be, you know, willing to offer it. And that's all I do. It's just it's very, very simple.
There's incredible accounts of your work ethic where even in theatre you can be on your feet for 10 and a half, longer, hours at a stretch. No toilet breaks. Just John Denver often, you know, kind of providing some reality check. I mean, some have said that's enough to put them off John Denver and ABBA and everyone else,
right,
and Elvis. But the people you work with and your ability to really gel, you're exacting in your procedures. What about your tolerance level when it comes to others around you?
No, it's very poor. No, I don't want your listeners to think that it's me who accommodates them. It's them who accommodate me. So they're the ones that deserve the credit. I am very, very focused, I'm very demanding, I'm very exacting, and if they don't cut it, then I'm not tolerant at all. And so you'll find that I'm not the most popular person in the operating room. A lot of people have come in because they want to do neurosurgery, they want to work with me, and they get cold very quickly if they don't cut it.
Yeah, what is cutting it? What do you have to be at?
You have to be focused on the same goal as me, and that is neurosurgery is unforgiving, you can't make mistakes. So you cannot make mistakes. It's not that, you know, oh, I'm so sorry I made the mistake. You know, I was just operating in another country 2 weeks ago and the nurse made a mistake. And I go, you cannot do that. You just can't make a mistake here. I'm in the middle of the brainstem. She made another mistake, she was out of there. If my staff can't cut that, then, you know, they get cold. So, no, I'm uncompromising, and it's my staff who've compromised. They're the ones who've really sort of had to come to the fore. And so, no, I'm very, very happy and very privileged to have the people around me who are around me. You know, if my staff make a mistake, I make sure they know they've made the mistake, and I make sure they know that they cannot do that again.
What is your weakness? If you look at yourself from a, you know, I'd like to do something better, and yet I've kind of put it to one side because it is in the too hard basket. There are other priorities. There's life to be prioritised for other people. What have you kind of put off to one side that you'd like to perhaps come back to?
I guess there are two major failings that people have identified, and when they identify them, I kind of see what they're talking about. The first is that I'm very demanding of others, so I expect the same level of excellence from others as I do myself. So that's a failing, and I remember the cadet master at Scots College came up to me because I was a company sergeant major, or no, regimental sergeant major. I was RSM, and I was really, really hard on the troops. And one night he pulled me out of the tent. He goes, "Charlie, you've got to stop doing that. You know, it's unfair. These people you can't expect them to have the same sort of standards as you have." And, you know, at 16 years of age, I had no idea what he was talking about. But it came back to me later when I made the same demands of my children and my wife, and, you know, expecting really, really high sort of high standards. And the other one is I lack diplomacy. Someone said, Charlie, you know, just pretend that you have to get to the top of the hill. Everyone's goal is to get to the top of the hill. Well, some people take the well-trodden path and they take the stand and they get up to the top. Their clothes are still neat and tidy, they're not sweating, and they've got to the top of the hill. You know, and there's another way. The other way is where you take the untrodden path and you use a machete and you're hacking through things and you get to the top, the clothes are all torn and you're sweating and you're cut and bruised. But Charlie, at the end of the day, both of you still get to the top of the hill.
That's true.
And me,
Yeah.
You're the
hacker.
I'm the hacker.
Right.
You know, I might have got to the top of my game, but boy, it's been a hard road, and I've turned off a lot of people, and you know, I just lack diplomacy. I'm just bad at it, and I'm bad at sort of compromising.
You walked the Qotr Trail, talking about hacking through impenetrable paths.
Yeah.
I mean, that one was, I guess, a walk in the park by comparison to other affairs and other relationships. But you know, talk to me about that, getting out and seeing something and just taking a breath and realising what it all means.
No, but see, again, it wasn't, Carson. Again, it comes back to that previous question.
Yeah.
So do I walk the Qotr Trail? No. What I do is I carry my own backpack and no one else does. I take my 2 kids. I expect them to carry their own backpacks. So, like, you know, I was always goal driven. You know, I'm going to get to the end, but I'm not going to get to the end like an anti-boy. I'm going to get to the end doing it as tough as I can. And so that I can get a real sort of experience from it. And so my poor kids, there were only 3 of us. There was like 15, I think. There was only 3 of us carrying our own backpacks, and my 2 children had to carry their own backpacks. And so I guess, again, it's that demanding high things, high expectations of yourself. It wasn't really recreational as such. It wasn't one of those things where, oh, I'm going to go and do it and get away from it all. It was, again, this goal. And it was a discipline. It was all about discipline, pushing myself to the limit and pushing my kids to the limit.
Right.
And you know, as opposed to going on a holiday where you lie back and chill and sort of get away from it all.
Can you do that? Can you ever do that?
No, I can't. I hate it.
Right.
My poor old wife, you know, she loves that. She wanted to go to Tuscany.
Wonderful.
And lie out on a chair and read books and enjoy the Tuscan sun and the food.
Was there a compromise? How did you get around that?
I knew I'd hate it, but I did it, and I hated it. So I'd get up every morning, go for a walk, you know, a long walk to exercise, and I don't know, it's just, I didn't like it. I mean, I had to do it because she wanted to do it and she loved it. And so but no, that's not my idea of a holiday. My idea of a holiday is sort of Qotr, and actually, you know, it's not a holiday. It's just another.
Of course.
Yeah, it's extra vocational.
Even getting from A to B, you quickly forget about the Sydney traffic when you're seeing a place through rose-colored glasses like in the US. But when you're reminded of it, you're on your motorbike. I guess because of that unwillingness to negotiate, you'd rather weave through. I mean, the need for speed, how integral is that alongside everything else?
It's become more than that now. Initially it was a challenge to stay alive and to beat the Sydney traffic and the thrill of, you know, being on a motorbike and the camaraderie amongst bikers, and it was all that sort of stuff, testosterone. Now I love it because it's a real escape. When you're on the motorbike and ride as fast as I do, you've got to be so focused on staying alive that you don't think about work. I actually forget work, forget all the problems at work when I'm on the bike. Even if it's only for 5 minutes, it's just total focus about staying alive. So yeah, it serves a different purpose now.
You're coming up 60. Can you keep it all together? I mean, juggling the speed, the precision, the family, the unexpected. How do you do it?
Look, I think something might fail one day, but at the moment it hasn't. And the thing that might fail is all the emotional ups and downs. I don't think the physical thing will get me. Well, it will eventually, but at the moment I'm still very fit and strong. I still have no tremor. I'm still doing tumours that no one else will tackle, doing them well. But you know, what gets me is the emotional side of things. I think that will eventually take me down, and I'll have to sort of quit. Because you know, I do get close to my patients, and every time one of them dies or does badly, it really hurts me and sort of takes its toll.
And an offset to that would be what? I mean,
the offset is all the ones who do well. I mean, I got a fantastic text last night from a lady called Annie, whose son I operated on, Daniel, and he was maybe 12 or 13 at the time. Again, inoperable tumour. They tried to do something about it in Perth. Instead, they just paralysed him. Tumour was still there, going to die. Came over here, took it out, according to her email last night, 15 years ago, thanking me that now he's a film producer and a writer, and he's had rave reviews in his play production and stuff. And you know, I mean that, yeah, you can't beat that. And at the bottom, the last line, Charlie, thank you for giving Daniel his life. You know, I mean that's what keeps you going. It's priceless. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we finish on just R&D. Where to next? I mean, they're talking billions in the US. Stem cell research, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the legacy on that. What, $3 billion, and you're handed 150,000 if you're lucky. By contrast, what is your own foundation realistically aiming for to kind of just rule a line under?
So realistically, the foundation, Cure Brain Cancer Foundation, is there to give patients hope. Realistically, pragmatically, hopefully, optimistically, it's going to find a cure for brain cancer. Trouble is, I think a lot of people are going to die before we find that cure. Well, they are. They're dying today without us finding a cure, and the foundation's been around since 2003. So realistically, what it offers patients is that, you know, there's someone out there trying for us at least. And that's the point I want to get across to them. Sure, we haven't come up with new treatments yet, and we haven't come into a cure yet, but please hang in there, because we are trying very, very hard. And you know, I'm really proud of the foundation. The foundation is something that I think should be duplicated across the world, and that is, it basically tries to break down all the barriers. So, believe it or not, there are political barriers and egos at work in research as well. One would think there wasn't. That, you know, that scientists are down there working for the betterment of mankind.
Turns out.
But it turns out there are all these bloody political barriers. There are people who set up foundations just to fund their own lab. So they're not doing it for the cure or the big picture. They're doing it because they want to build their own little empire. And I must say that I had a little bit of that when I started it. You know, I wanted the foundation to fund research here at my hospital. I wanted them to fund my ideas here. But thankfully I surrounded myself with good people who saw the big picture, and they said, Charlie, no, because that sort of foundation will die when you die. We want a foundation that sees the big picture, where the ultimate goal is to help patients with brain cancer. And therefore, we're not going to fund just you. We're going to fund the best projects in the world, and we're going to get people to collaborate so that people get bang for their bucks, and there's no duplication of, you know, research, and no silo building, and so, you know, we're going to get everyone to talk to each other. We're going to get everyone to be on the same page. We're not going to worry about the politics of medicine, the politics of research, and we're going to fund good research. And that's my foundation, and I'm very, very proud of them for that.
10 rapid fire questions for you now.
Oh, okay.
You don't even have to pause to ponder it. You just boom, right? What's the one book everyone should read?
The Quran.
The one absolute deal breaker when you're negotiating?
Dishonesty.
What's the best advice your mother gave you?
Well, English wasn't her first language, so when she related an idiom to me, it was never quite right.
Okay.
And she always used to say, if 100 people jumped over the cliff, you don't have to be one of them. Now, I'm not quite sure what that meant, but I think it meant you don't have to follow the crowd. You know, you can do something different, or, you know, you can go against the tide.
What's your biggest regret?
See, there's a question no one's ever asked me, Carson. Well done.
Well, we got there eventually.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't have any. You know, I must have one. I guess my biggest regret is the fact that I still haven't developed diplomacy. I mean, I'd really like to be diplomat. I'd like to be able to do what my friends can do, and that is call someone an idiot, but they think you're not.
Right.
And so in meetings, when someone says that tumour's inoperable, I go, you idiot, that is operable. And I turn everyone off. I'd love to be able to go, oh no, you're right, you know, yes, you might, yeah, but do you think maybe we, you know, that sort of diplomacy. I like diplomacy. If
you could witness one moment in history, what would it be?
I guess when Moses came down with the 10 Commandments.
Mm-hmm. That is impressive. That one before, down off the Sinai. If you could change one moment in history, that's the corollary to it. If you could change one moment in history, what would that be?
I guess 9/11.
What's your favourite city to do business in?
Singapore.
Your favourite city to holiday in?
LA.
One piece of life advice that you'd like to pass on?
Life is what goes by while you're thinking about it.
In other words, just do it.
Just do it.
Finally, a guaranteed crowd-pleasing joke for a room full of 10-year-olds. So the daughters, this should be a cinch.
No, it isn't. I'm bad at telling jokes, and the only joke I know are those dirty jokes.
Which would rather perhaps cause offence.
Yes.
For our viewers.
Oh no, it's a great joke.
Well, please proceed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It always brings a great laugh.
Okay, great.
It's a medical joke.
Yeah.
So, you know, because I'm a doctor. So Dr. Dave has just slept with one of his patients and feels incredibly guilty. And he's doing this soul searching. Oh my God, I shouldn't have slept with the patient. But then the second voice comes in, but don't worry, you know, you're not the only one to sleep with one of your patients, and after all, you're single. Yeah. His own voice keeps telling him, but Dave, you're a fucking vet. How good is that?
That'll pass muster. Thank you, Charles. Thank you very much. Appreciate your insights. It's never quite what it seems, is it?
No. It's a pleasure, Carson. It's a pleasure.